Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Anna Marika, but call me AMG, and I make videos about living in my tiny house on wheels called Tiny G. Before we get into today's very hot topic, and I've given myself a coffee to support me through this, is to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you want to make sure that my videos show up in your feed, and it also helps to show the channel to other people that might be interested. And there's Oreo. So today's topic is for many people considering going tiny and building a tiny house on wheels and living in it is a concern, and that is finding a place to put the tiny house. So finding a parking spot. Most countries in the world, and I am not an expert on this, so I'm not giving you any advice. I'm just going to share my experiences, not all wonderful, with finding a parking spot, and I will explain how I ended up where I am right now, and what I've learned from my journey of finding a parking spot, what that means for the immediate future in terms of where Tiny G will be parked. Unfortunately, in many countries around the world, living in a tiny house on wheels is not legal. I am lucky at the moment that in New South Wales, which the state of New South Wales in Australia, they have, because we've had bushfires, we've had terrible floods, and so many people are homeless, they have made it legal to live in a variety of dwellings, including a tiny house on wheels, which typically is categorized as a caravan. So that is the case as it is. I think it is constantly changing and hopefully improving. In some countries, I know in the US there are tiny house communities where you can live legally, but in general, a lot of people, especially here in Australia, who, when they live in a tiny house on wheels, often they live somewhere and they fly under the radar, if you like. So it's a concern, and I know a lot of people decide not to start building their tiny house on wheels until they have a parking spot. I'm a bit of an optimist, and so I did not wait till I had a parking spot to start on the journey of getting myself a tiny house. But when the tiny house builder told me that they had a trailer and were starting to build, that's when I realized I have to get a wiggle on to try and find myself a parking spot. I had watched a video by Adelina from My Big Tiny House Life, where she talked through how she had gone about finding a new parking spot for her tiny house, and she showed a leaflet that she created, and I thought and to do a mailbox drop with, and I thought that's a fantastic idea. So I took sort of her ideas and I created a leaflet myself, where I had a few mock-up photos of what tiny might look like, because at that point I only had a trailer, and what we were looking for, who we were, and how it could benefit people offering me a place to park her. I even had about 50 leaflets printed, never actually distributed. When I cleaned out the house to move into Tiny, I actually found them and went, oh, right, that's right, I had those printed. But I also turned it into just an image, and I posted in that image with the text in a number of Facebook groups. Some of those Facebook groups were Australian-wide, and I did not expect to get any response. I didn't expect anybody to be in those groups that were actually in the area that I wanted to live in. But I was kind of hoping that there might be someone who knew someone who knew someone, you know how that works, in the area, who had a piece of land that they were happy for me to put Tiny on. I also posted in local Facebook groups, and one of those groups, there was someone in there who I sort of knew. I mean, we weren't close friends. I think we'd spoken a couple of times, but she saw my post, so she knew who I was. Saw what I was looking for. She had a friend who had properties, and she passed it on to her, and then that person, Monica, contacted me and said, hey, if you want to talk. So we did, and she told me that she had 2 properties that she would be happy for me to put the tiny on. One was in the town that I was living in the backyard of a property where the house at the front had been converted to offices, and there was this big backyard where nothing happened, and she said, you're very welcome to put it there. She said, I also have a 10-acre rural property, and my eyes lit up when she said that. And then I went, oh, okay, when she told me that it needed a lot of work and it wasn't ready anytime soon to move tiny onto. But she said, if you're going to have to do the work on the inside of your tiny house, you're very welcome to park it in town first, and then when you're ready and the site is ready, the 10-acre property, you can move it then. And I thought, that's a perfect solution. So I had my spot, and in May 2021, the tiny shell was towed to the site in town, and that worked out perfectly. It was a couple of minutes down the road, so it was really easy to come here, do all the work on the inside, and in the meantime, I was like, when she's ready, I have this 10-acre property to move onto. In that process, I got really close to Monica, and she became friends, and got to know her husband, and really liked, have a good relationship with both of them, which I think is important. And anyway, so about 6 months or 7 months after starting work on Tiny, I let them know that I was about, ready to move her. She was getting closer to being finished, and then they said, oh, no, nowhere near ready to move your tiny house. I went, oh, okay, that's fair enough. Let me just keep working on it so that she's really finished as much as possible to move into, and then maybe then the 10-acre property is ready. So about 7 months later, again, still not ready, and they said, just if we know that you want a rural place, so go and look elsewhere, right? We don't expect you to stay with us. If you need to do what's right for you. So I thought, well, it worked so well the first time, and I'm going back to Facebook groups. But this time I thought, well, other than in the national groups, got a lot of good luck, but no other response. And more actually people saying, oh, tell us about how are you going about finding your parking spot. So I thought, I'm going to go local again. Posted in the same local groups, and this time I had a few responses, and 3 that I took a bit further. One was with someone who had a fairly big rural property not too far from here, but she was very uncomfortable about the fact that it wasn't legal. She had got in touch with our local council, and they had said, we don't. What do you mean, tiny? What's that? What are you talking about? No, we don't know. Is that a caravan? So they didn't know, but also they weren't really keen on considering what that might mean. So she was very uncomfortable. She was worried that she would get in trouble with council. So fair enough. Both parties need to feel comfortable. I would be more comfortable living under the radar, because it would have been I would be out of sight on that property. But anyway, so she was not comfortable, and fair enough. So we just went, okay, thank you very much, at least for considering. Then there was someone else who I immediately felt uncomfortable. She had a beautiful property, and sent me in about a 10-minute time frame at least it would have been close to 100 photos of her property. And they kept coming, and I was like, she's keen, and kept going. Okay, so what do you think? This is the spot that I had in mind for you, which was very close to her house. She lives there, and it was very close to her house. I'm like, oh, but it was in a village that Monica, from the property that I was on, also lived. So I just sent her a message and said, hey, this person offered me a spot on her property. Do you know her? Do you recommend that I can pursue this? And she came back to me and said, I wouldn't. Don't. We've had a bit of issues with this person. You don't want to put yourself at risk. And so she shared some of the things that had happened. I went, oh, no, that definitely. So my gut feeling was right. So did not go further with that. And then there was someone who said, I've got a mate who has a 5-acre property. He's renting out the house on the property, but there's a lot of space. Let me know if you're interested to see if it would be right for your tiny house. I went, oh, that sounds promising. So got in touch. We organised to go. It's in a village really nearby, close to the train station, so my daughter could still get to school. Still in the area that I know lots of people. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds promising. 5 acres, cool. Sounds like a decent sized property. A lovely, quiet hideaway spot probably can be found there. And so we went on a Saturday morning. My daughter and I went to see it, and it turns out that he is a real estate agent, and the property is owned by his mate, and he was going to manage renting out the property for his mate. So we got there. He was very late, and so we've been looking around, and it was on a road that was not a busy road, but it was at the end of on that road was a much further down, but it was sort of the access road for some big business. So during the week, I would imagine lots of people going to and from work, which made me feel a little bit, especially when I found out when this guy finally showed up, that the spot that he had in mind was right on the fence next to the road. So it's like, oh, not ideal, but okay. Then, but the terrain was so rough. We walked around, and a couple of times I almost twisted my ankle because it was so uneven. And I said to him, I need electricity, I need access to water, and this terrain needs to be flattened. He went, absolutely, not a problem. We can fix that for you. I went, oh, okay. We talked. He seemed a little bit taken aback when we talked about what rent I would be willing to pay. I was definitely not willing to pay the amount of rent that he was going to ask, because then I could have just as easily rented a house in town. And I was like, I'll bring my own house. And later I discovered he also expected me to pay for to install the electricity and to get the water connected. So we got to a much lower rent to pay. And so after that, he went away. We got in the car, and my daughter's first reaction was, I don't like him. And I went, I don't like him either, but I don't have to live with him. He was a salesperson. He was constantly selling the property, which was a bit tough to deal with. But I'd seen the possibilities, and I thought, oh, rules, quiet. I can start to make a permanent space here for myself. Then I'd sent him a template contract that I had for living in a tiny house, and paid a deposit for the rent, because I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. Fortunately, we never got to sign anything. I don't think he even looked at the contract at any point. And I wonder if that is because he didn't want to have to commit to anything. But I kept saying, I need an accessible part of this property. And he said, yep, going to happen. The guy that's going to rent the house, he's got all the machinery, and he's already said he's happy to flatten the area for you. So we agreed on a date. I booked the towing company, and then the weekend before, so on Thursday the towing company was going to come. On the weekend before, I went to have a look. Nothing had happened. And so I sent him messages, I left voicemail messages, and he finally got back to me on the Wednesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the towing company was going to be there in less than 15 hours. And he said, yeah, so I spoke to the guy who was going to do the works for you. He is in hospital, his girlfriend, something health related, obviously. And he said, but just give us a couple more days and it's sorted. It will be sorted. It will absolutely be perfect for you. I exploded. I walked through the house. Some very strong language was used, and immediately cancelled the towing company very apologetically. Said sorry, site fell through, because I realized I could not trust this guy. He would make all the promises that I wanted to hear. He would say yes to anything, but wouldn't deliver. He would have let me. He didn't even check in to see that the site was ready. He had delegated the job to this guy who hadn't even moved into the house, so he wasn't even on site. I delegated to him, so that was it, off his hands. Didn't have to worry about it, wasn't going to pay much attention. He would have let me tow Tiny to the site, where the towing company would have taken one look at the site and gone, we are not towing this tiny house onto that site, not under our insurance, thank you very much. And they would have towed it back, and I would have had to pay the towing fee and still be in the same spot as I was before. So I told him, that's it, not happening, and I told him why, and I said I would like my deposit back. And he went, okay, not even an apology, nothing. Took 4 weeks to get my deposit back, after a lot of chasing, and a lot of excuses from his side. And I was really bumped about it, but more so about my own willingness to overlook all the red flags that had been there along the way. So I was like, okay, right, so I'm not moving, and fair enough, I'm continuing to work on the tiny house, and I actually slowed down quite a bit in terms, because I'd been go with all the internal works, and I sort of slowed down a bit. We were in the middle of winter. I was like, okay, just calm down. My daughter was about to go into her final year in high school, so I wanted to be there for her. So it really slowed down a bit. So about a year and a half later, and at the end, I'll tell you what I learned from this experience and the next that made me decide some things about my tiny house sport going forward. So then a year and a half later, so really I took my time. By that stage, my daughter had finished high school, so the stress of the final year was done, and she was going to take a gap year. So we no longer had the issue of it. We needed to be somewhere where she could easily get to school. And I got to a point where I went, okay, I'm ready to look. The 10-acre property was still not ready. So, and it wasn't looking like it was going to get ready anytime soon because the owners were just so busy with all sorts of other things. So, fair enough. And this time I thought I need someone who is my sanity check, somebody who's not driven by the dream and can see it more rationally. And I thought I need someone who, because I was so disappointed with the people that I dealt with and the kind of people that seemed to offer places to live. I thought I need someone who can vet those people first. Now in Australia we have a company called Park My Tiny House. They have a website, parkmytinyhouse.com.au. I met the owner, and they're kind of, I call it the dating agency for tiny house dwellers who are looking for a parking spot and people who have property. And I thought that's what I need. I need someone who, she lives in a tiny house herself, she knows what is needed, why people do it, she knows me a little bit. So I signed up with her and she went, okay. She went to look for me and she found a property that was a bit further out than I had initially wanted, but this stage we didn't need to be close to my daughter's school. I would still be close enough to Sydney to be able to see my friends, and to this area to see my friends. And so we went down and had a look. Now, when the site was, or the property was described as, like, it's a 3-acre property. They have about a 1 acre part of it that would be for you. It's in a gated community. There are lovely facilities like a swimming pool and a gym that you can use, and that word gated community kind of, it wasn't a red flag, but I wasn't sure. But I thought, okay, let's go and meet these people. When we drove down, I said to my daughter, you're the critical one. You know me. Look for anything that you think would not be right, or that would make me jump into something that I shouldn't be jumping into. She went, okay. She liked that job. Anyway, so got there, met the lovely couple. Absolutely, it's a young couple. They had built their house on the 3-acre property. They built it in the middle, and then there was like 2 wings of land, and they were each about like a 1 acre piece. And she was like, there's 1 acre property part there. That do with it what you like. And I was like, oh, an acre is a bit much, but okay. And they were wonderful. They said, okay, so you need electricity. That's all right. We'll install the electricity. His dad is an electrician, so I said, I'm going to work with my dad and we'll get the electricity there. Water was already on the site. They realized that the paddock, if you like, was right on the road, so that we're going to plant some mature hedging so that you have a bit more privacy. They were willing to really make this work together. And so I did ask about the gated community thing, because I was like, what exactly does that mean? And he said, oh, it's a lot. The people that live here now are all very much people like us. They are often young families. It's their first real property. And so we kind of live and let live. He said this road is a dead-end road, so the only people that drive past are the people that live and there's only a couple of houses further down the road. So I went, okay, cool, all right. So we agreed in principle that we would go ahead, and they started to work on the electricity connection. We then agreed on a date. He sent me the rules and regulations for the community, because when you start to deal with something like a gated community, you have state rules and regulations, council rules and regulations, and then on top of that, I should probably go the other way around, but on top of that you have rules and regulations that the community has set that people have to adhere to. if they live there. So as I said, state had legalized living in all sorts of dwellings, including tiny houses. Here, the owner of the property had gone to the council. The council said, "Do what you like," and then he sent me the rules and regulations of the community. I said, have a read through and see if you think that there's anything that causes problems for a tiny house on wheels." And there were a lot of things that they didn't allow on the property, but there was no rules for caravans on the property, because really tiny houses, considered a caravan. You weren't allowed to build granny flats and those big farm sheds. So it's like, I'm not a granny flat, I'm not a farm shed. I couldn't see any issues there. And then he said, "Okay, but we've got a community meeting coming up, and what I'll do is I'll have a chat to the chairperson. I know her well. I'll have a chat and see what she thinks." After that meeting, I didn't hear from him until a couple of days later, and he forwarded me an email from the committee to all the residents to say that somebody had built, I think it was a granny flat on site, and that they were told to remove the granny flat because it was not allowed. And my heart sank. My gut got really uncomfortable. And although technically I did not think that what we were going to do had anything to do with that, because we're not a granny flat. This was about permanent structures, and of course a tiny house on wheels is not a permanent structure. But I realized that because this was now a very public discussion in the community, there would be two camps. There would be the camp that disagreed with that rule to begin with and felt that they should be allowed to build on their property whatever they wanted to build on their property, and they would be looking around going, who's doing things and getting away with it? That would be unfair. And then there would be people who felt that you needed to follow the rules and therefore might be very vigilant in finding people who were breaking the rules. In both cases, I could just see that at some point I would have been told to leave. Not because I was doing something illegal, but because of so many people were reacting to it and probably creating problems for the committee. And I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep for a week. I went between it will be all right to it won't be all right. And then in the end, I had to get back to them and say, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." Because it's not as if I can hook my Tiny onto my car and tow her somewhere. I can't live with that hanging over me, and it's impossible to tow a tiny house onto this community, this gated community, without a lot of people seeing it. And so even if they don't know where it went, they might go looking for it. So it fell through. This time I was absolutely gutted. It was no one's fault. But I had come so close, and it was going to be, if this hadn't been a gated community, this would have been absolutely wonderful. And so I'd quickly let Monica, again I had to cancel the towing company because I'd already booked it. I'd paid a non-refundable deposit to show my goodwill and my being serious. So I had to do that again. Same company, poor people. Again, short notice, and I told Monica that I was not moving. But I was, oh gosh, I was so down in the dumps about it. And then I thought, you know what? For some reason I thought that Monica would not be comfortable with me living in Tiny where she was at the time, where she was parked. And I thought, I'm just going to ask, what's the worst that can happen? It can't get any worse than it is. So I was in Tiny on the weekend, then on a Saturday, and she was doing some stuff around, and she said, "Oh, tell me what happened." and I told her the story. And before I could ask, she said, now I know this is not your ideal spot, but you know you could just move in here, right? And when she said that, I felt I grew 2 centimeters taller with all the weight falling off my shoulders. And I went, are you sure? And she said, yes, yeah. I mean, I know it's not what you want, but you know, you can see it as a, you know, just live here for a while. Well, I mean, you're welcome to live here for however long you want. Well, that was that. So then I said I didn't have to move the tiny house, which was good. Didn't have to go back to the towing company again. Sorry, Tiny Towing, if you're watching. Now you know why I dumped you twice. And so very quickly, in about 2 months' time, we'd moved in here, and I'm still here. So before I tell you what I've learned from this and what that's going to mean for future parking spots, just a heads up, next week's video I'm going to take you through my living room and really look at how I built it and how and all the functions it serves as a living room, an office, and it has a third function that I will share with you, well, that you might not see coming. So make sure you subscribe to get that video. All right, so what did I learn from this? Well, one is that a dream is a motivator, but it can also give you blinkers. And for me, I seem to have gone into this dream with it's all or nothing. So living in a tiny house has to be on a rural property. It has to be the rural retreat where I will live for a very long time. And as a result, I ignored so many red flags that I otherwise would not have ignored. I would have much quicker pulled out. And it was something that Monica said, you can move in here for now and then move later when this 10-acre property, our 10-acre property is ready. You can move there. You can live here as long as you want. I realized that sometimes the dream is there, but the way you get there is not straightforward. It's not an all or nothing event. It is about getting closer and seeing the opportunities to get closer. And moving into the tiny house, living here, gets me that bit closer. And the second thing I learned for me, and again, these are my experiences, my learnings, and I just want to share them with you in case you have ideas or it helps you make your decisions. For me, the relationship with the owners is very important. I trust Monica and her husband completely. They are in it. They understand what I'm looking for. They understand why I do it. They're not in it to milk me dry, and they're there they see it as a win-win, whereas and it needs to work for both sides. So what this means for my future is I'm going to stay here until the 10-acre property is ready. This is not perfect, but it's lovely. I love living in my tiny house, and it will be even better once I can get onto that 10-acre rural property and create my rural retreat. I hope that happens in 2025, in which case I will take you obviously on the journey. I will document that. I will do lots of videos about it, about the whole, preparing for it and the move and everything else. I hope it will be next year. Who knows? But I'm going to hang out for it unless somehow something comes up where I have a similar sense of comfort, security that I have with these owners. If something similar comes up for some reason, then I'll take it. but I'm not going to chase it. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to put energy into that to find it. I'm good where I am, and I trust that I will get to my rural retreat at some point. Right, that's it about my finding a parking spot. I will see you next week. Bye.